Oh, hello there. I'm Bilchan.
I'm Nimakung.
I'm Banchan.
In this class, I'll read to all of you. Chapter 14, Section 1 of A Tale of Two Cities, Book the Second Golden Thread.
As.
Ah.
A Tale of Two Cities, Book the Second Golden Thread. Charles Dickens. Chapter 14, Section 1. To the Eyes of Mr. Jeremiah Cruncher. Sitting on his stool in Fleet Street with his grisly urchin beside him. A vast number and variety of objects in movement were every day presented. You could sit upon anything in Fleet Street during the busy hours of the day, and not be dazed and defiant by two immense processions, one ever tending westward with the sun, the other ever tending eastward from the sun. Sun goes down, with his straw in his mouth. Mr. Cruncher sat watching the two streams. That jury had no expectation of their ever running dry, nor would it have been an expectation of a hopeful kind, of the ties to the opposite shore. Brief as such companionship was in every separate instance. Mr. Desire to have the honour of drinking her very good health. Help us. That he recruited his finances, as just now observed. Time was when a poet sat upon a stool in a public place, and mused in the sight of men. Mr. Cruncher, sitting on a stool in a public place, but not being a poet, mused as little as possible, and looked about him. He thought that he was thus engaged in a season when crowds were few, and belated women few. In his breast that mice Cruncher must have been flopping in some pointed manner, when an unusual concourse pouring down Fleet Street westward attracted his attention. That way Mr. Along, and that there was popular objection to this funeral which engendered uproar. In jury said Mr. Cruncher, turning to his offspring, who cried young jury. The young gentleman uttered this exultant sound with mysterious significance. Other gentlemen took that cry so ill that he watched his opportunity smote the young gentleman on there. What I mean? What do you want? To con me to your own father, Rip. This boy is a-getting too many for me, said Mr. Cruncher, surveying him in and his hearers. Have you, or you shall feel some more of. No harm, young Jerry protested, rubbing his cheek. Stop it. Then said Mr. Cruncher, I won't have none of your no harms. That there seat his son obeyed, and the crowd approached, bullying and hissing round a dingy hearse and dingy mourning coach there. Was only one mourner essential to the dignity of the position. Please him. However, with an increasing rabble surrounding the coach, deriding, then making grimaces at him and incessantly groaning and calling out, Ah, spies, this, a peach. Funerals had at all times a remarkable attraction for Mr. Cruncher, always pricked up his senses and became excited when a funeral passed Tilson's. Naturally, therefore, a funeral with this uncommon attendance excited him greatly, and he asked of the first man who ran against him, What is it, brother? I don't know, said the man. Spies. Dist. He asked another man. I don't know, returned the man, 'tis mouth nevertheless, ardor spies. This at length better informed on the merits of the case tumbled against him. This person he learned That the funeral was the funeral of one Roger Clee. He a spy? Asked Mr. Cruncher. Old Billy Spy returned his informant. This. Why, to be sure, exclaimed Jerry Trial, at which he had assisted. I've seen him, dead mutton. Returned the other, and can't be too dead. Have him out. There. Spies. Fill him out there. And the prevalent absence of any idea, eagerness, and loudly repeating the suggestion. To have him out, mobbed the two vehicles so closely that they came to a stop, on the crowds opening the coach doors. Himself was in their hands for a moment, but he was so alert, and made such good use of his time, was scouring away up a by street after shedding his cloak, hat, hatband, white pocket handkerchief, and other symbolical chairs, these pieces and scattered far and wide with great enjoyment up their shops for a crowd in. Those times stopped at nothing was a monster much dreaded, hers to take. The coughing out when some brighter genius proposed instead, being escorted to its destination amidst general rejoicing. Practical suggestions being much needed, this suggestion too was received with acclamation, filled with 8 inside and a dozen out, the roof of the hearse as could by any exercise of ingenuity stick upon it. Among the first of these volunteers was Jerry Cruncher himself, his spiky head from the observation of Tolson's morning coach, the officiating. Undertakers made some protest against these changes in the ceremonies, but the river being alarmingly near, of cold immersion in bringing refractory members of the profession to reason was faint and brief. The remodel procession started Herr Sydvist by the regular driver, who was perched beside him under close inspection for the purpose, and with the P-men, also attended by his cabinet minister, driving the morning coach, a bare leader, a popular street character of the time, was impressed as an additional ornament the Strand, and his beard, who was black and very mangy, quite an undertaking heir to that part of the procession in which he walked, that, with beer drinking, pipe smoking, sun roaring, and infinite caricaturing of woe, the disorderly procession went its way, recruiting at every step, shooting up before it. Its destination was the old church of St. Pancras, far off in the fields. It got there in course of time on pouring into the burial ground, finally, clean in its own way, and highly to its own satisfaction, disposed of for itself casual passers-by, as old Billy Spies, and wreaking vengeance on them, Bailey in their lives in the realization of this fancy, roughly hassled and maltreated. The transition to the sport of window breaking, to the plundering of public houses, was easy and natural. At last, several hours, when sundry summer houses had been pulled down, been torn up to arm the more belligerent spirits that the guards were coming. Before this rumour, the crowd gradually melted away, and perhaps the guards came, and perhaps they never came, was the usual progress of a mob. Still closing spots, but had remained behind in the churchyard with the undertakers. The place had a soothing influence on him. A pipe from a neighbouring public house, and smoked it, railings immaturely considering this spot. Sherry, said Mr. Cruncher, his usual way, you see. That there Clee that day pipe out, and ruminated a little longer. He turned himself about, he might appear before the hour of closing on his station at Tolson's. Whether his meditations on mortality had touched his liver, health had been previously at all amiss, little attention to an eminent man is not so much to the purpose back. Young Jerry relieved his father with dutiful interest his absence. The bank closed, the ancient clerks came out, watch was set, and Mr. Cruncher and his son went home to tea. Then, I tell you where it is, said Mr. Cruncher to his wife. and enduring, if as honest tradesmen tonight. I shall make sure that you've been praying again me, wise Cruncher. Shook her head. Why, Mr. Cruncher, with signs of angry apprehension. Well then, nothing. You might as well flop as meditate. Again me one way as another. Yes. Yes, Jerry, repeated Mr. Cruncher, sitting down to tea. Ah. It is yes, Jerry. About it. You may say yes, Mr. in these sulky corroborations, but made use of them too to express general ironical dissatisfaction. You and your yes, Jerry, said Mr. Cruncher, taking a bite out of his bread and butter, it down with a large invisible lustre out of his saucer. I think so. You are going out tonight, asked his decent wife, took another bite. Yes, may I go with you? Father? Asked his son, briskly. No, you mayn't. I'm a-going as your mother knows of fishing. That's where I'm going to. Your fishing rod gets rather rusty, don't it? Shall you bring any fish home? If I don't, you'll have shortcomings. Tomorrow, returned that gentleman, shaking his head. That's questions enough for you. I ain't going out evening to keeping a most vigilant watch on mice. Cruncher, her in conversation that she might be prevented from meditating any petitions to his disadvantage. With this view, he urged his son to hold her in conversation also. Complaint he could bring against her moment to her own reflections. Wife, a ghost story. I mind you, said Mr. Cruncher. No games tomorrow, if I as honest tradesman were to, none of your not touching of it, and sticking to bread, if I as honest tradesman bear, none of your declaring on water, when you go to Rome, do as Rome does. Rome will be ugly customer to you. You don't. I'm your own. Then he began grumbling again. Into the face of your own widdles and drink. You mayn't make the widdles and drink here and feeling conduct. Look at your boy, he is yourn, ain't he? He's as thin as a laugh. Do you call yourself a mother to shun Jerry on a tender place? First duty, and whatever else she did or neglected, indicated by his other parent. Thus the evening wore away with the Cruncher family, until young Jerry was ordered to bed, and his mother injunctions obeyed them. Mr. with solitary pipes, and did not start upon his excursion until nearly 1 o'clock. Towards that small and ghostly hour, he rose up from his chair, took a key out of his pocket, opened a locked cupboard, forth a sack, a grower of convenient size, a rope and chain, and other fishing tackle of that nature. Manner he bestowed a parting to find some ice. Cruncher extinguished the light and went out. Jerry won. He went to bed. Was not long after his father of the darkness he followed out of the room, followed down the stairs, followed down the court, followed out into the streets. Uneasiness concerning his getting into the house again, for he was full of lodgers, and the toasted a jar all night. The art and mystery of his father's and his calling. In Jerry, close to house fronts, walls, and doorways, to one another held his honoured parent in view. Northwood had not gone far. Isa Colton and the two trudged on together. First starting, they were beyond the winking lamps, watchmen, and whiled upon a lonely road, hurrying that so silently that, if Jerry had been superstitious, have supposed the second fuller of the gentle crash to have sudden split himself into two. The three went on until the three stopped under a bank overhanging the road. Top of the bank was a low brick wall surmounted by an iron railing. In the shadow of bank on wall the three turned out of the road, and up a blind lane of which the wall there 8 or 10 feet each formed one side. crouching down in a corner. Up the lane, the next object that young Jerry saw of his honoured parent, pretty well defined against a watery and clouded moon, Imbley. Scaling an iron gate. He was soon over her, fishermen got over her. And then the third, crowned within the gate and lay there. A little less stunning perhaps. Then moved away on their hands and knees. The gate which he did holding his breath, a corner there, and looking in through some ranked grass, churchyard that they were. And looking on like ghosts in white, itself looked on like the ghost of a monstrous giant, far before they stopped and stood upright. And then they began to fish. They fished with a spade at first, the adjusting some instrument like a great corkscrew, whatever tools they worked with. They worked hard, Jerry, that he made off with. His air as stiff as his father's, but his long-cherished desire to know more about these matters, him and his running away, but lulled him back again, fishing perseveringly when he peeped in at the gate for the second time, but now they seemed to have got a bite, and complaining sounds down below, and their bent figures were strained by a weight. By slow degrees the weight broke away the earth upon, and came to the surface, be but one. He saw it, to wrench it open, he was so frightened, being new to the sight, that he made off again, my lord. More, he would not have stopped then, breath, it being a spectral sort of race that he ran, highly desirable to get to the end. Oh, the coughing he had seen was running after him, and on behind him bolt upright upon its narrow and pursuer. Fish on. It was an inconsistent and ubiquitous thing too, for while it was making the whole night behind him dreadful, the road waiter avoid dark alleys like a drop schoolboy's kite without tail and wings. It didn't always do, rubbing its horrible shoulders against doors and drawing them up to its ears, as if it were laughing. The into shadows on the road, and lay cunningly on its back to trip him up, was insistently hopping on behind and gaining on him got to his own door. He had reason for being half dead, then it would not leave him. Every stair scrambled into bed with him and bumped down heavy on his breast when he fell asleep. From his oppressed slumber, Jerry in his closet was awakened after daybreak and before sunrise. I've his father in the family room. Something had gone wrong with him, at least so young Jerry inferred from the circumstance of his holding mice, Cruncher by the ears, headboard of the bed. I told you I would, said Mr. Cruncher. Jerry, his wife implored. Business, said Jerry, and me and my God no suffer and obey. I try to be a good wife, protested with tears. Is it being a good wife to oppose your husband's business? Is it hindering your husband to dishonor his business? The dreadful business then, it's enough for you, retorted Mr. Cruncher. Be the wife of an honest tradesman with calculations when he took to his trade, or when he didn't. An obeying wife would let his trade alone altogether. Call yourself a religious woman? If you're a religious woman, give. We are a religious one. Of a pile, the altercation was conducted in a low tone of voice, and terminated in the honest tradesman's kicking off his clay-soled boots at his length on the floor, on his back, with his rusty hands under his head for a pillow. His son lay down too and fell asleep again. Breakfast, and not much of anything else. Mr. Spirits and out of temper projectile. For the correction of Mice Cruncher, any symptoms of her saying grace are, and set off with his son to pursue his ostensible calling. And Jerry, crowded Fleet Street, was a very different young Jerry from him of the previous night, wending home through darkness and solitude from his grim pursuer. Fresh with the day, it is not improbable that he had comparison Fleet Street and the City of London, that fine morning. Father, said young Jerry, as they walked along, car to keep at arm's length into. Have the stow wall between them. Mr. Cruncher came to stop. On the pavement before he answered, thought you knowed everything, Father, said the wordless boy. Him well, returned Mr. Cruncher, going on again. Spike's free play. What's his goods, Father? Asked the brisk young Jerry. Goods, said Mr. Cruncher after turning it over in his mind. Bodies, ain't it, Father? Asked the lively boy. Of that sort, said Mr. Cruncher. Oh, Father. Mr. Sid but shook his head in a dubious and moral way upon how you drill up your talents. Be careful to drill up your talents, never to say no more than you can help to nobody. Young Jerry, thus encouraged, went on a few yards in advance, plaid the stool in the shadow of the bar, missed to himself. Jerry, you honest tradesman, be a blessing to you. To be continued.